Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Coaching Masters podcast. This is the first episode of 2022. Now, we started the Coaching Masters podcast back in 2019. So that's pretty incredible when you think about that. So 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022, we are now going into our... Actually, did we start in 2019 or 2020? I can't remember. One of those. It was either the end of 2019 or it was the start of 2020. I think it might have been the start of 2020, actually, because I remember it being summer. And yeah, so we started the Coaching Masters podcast in 2020. So now it has seen 2020, 2021, and now 2020, 2022. So, but anyway... This is the first episode of the Coaching Masters podcast in 2022. I just want to stop for a moment to just really embrace how incredible that is. 2022. Now, one thing that absolutely blows my mind is my grandmother, right? Her name is Bridie Collins. Her full name is Bridget, but we call her Bridie, and everybody calls her Ma. Whether or not she's your grandmother, your mother, your neighbor, your best friend, everyone in Bermondsey knows her as Ma, right? Just what we call Ma. She turns 100 years old this year. She was born in September 1922. Now, just to put that into perspective, right? Now, I don't know if this reference, not everybody's going to have seen this movie, but have you seen the film Lawless, right? Now, if you have seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't seen it, essentially the film is about 1920s America during the Prohibition era, where drinking alcohol was illegal, right? So Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf and their other brother, I can't remember the actor's name, but he's brilliant. They basically sell alcohol illegally, right? Now, I tell you what absolutely blows my mind, right? And if you've not seen it, definitely see it, because it's an absolutely phenomenal film. But I tell you what blows my mind is that film is set in 1922, right? That film is set the year my grandmother, Bridget, was born. Now, the reason that blows my mind so much is because when you watch that movie, you feel as though you are watching a piece of ancient history. It feels so long ago that is history, right? Separated from what we can consider life today, that it feels as though you might as well be watching a film that's set 500 years ago. It feels that far away. 1922 England, 1922 America, 1922 around the world feels like ancient history when you actually look at what we were doing in 1922 and the things that were going on in the world and the stage of civilization that we were at. Now, my grandmother was alive during that time period. Now, I tell you what blows my mind even more about that. Now, by the way, I am going to be linking this to today's topic, which is New Year, New Me. So this is linked to that because the reason that blows my mind so much is she has literally witnessed and experienced the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the zeros or whatever the noughties they call it, the 10s, and now the start of the 20s again. Right? She's officially in her 11th decade. Just think about that for a moment. That fucking blows my mind in terms of the amount of decades that she's actually been a part of. Now, think about this. Each and every one of those decades, especially through the 1900s, right? They all had a very distinctive personality, right? They all have a very distinctive feel, a distinctive style, a distinctive energy about them, right? Think about the 80s, the 1980s. The 1980s has such a distinctive place in history when it comes to the movies, the music that was there, the people who were famous, the stories that were being told, the political movements. And that's one decade, right? The 1980s. Think about the 1970s. The 70s had its own very specific feel to it, as did the 60s, as did the 50s, as did the 40s, and so on and so on and so on. And she has experienced every single one of them. That blows my mind. I watched a film over Christmas. It was called Last Train to Christmas. And it was really good, right? It was really good. So basically, he starts off in the 1980s, and each time he goes to the next carriage, he moves 10 years forward in his life, right? So he starts off in the 80s, and then he goes to the next carriage in order to go and get some drinks. And then it's the 1990s. And what he realizes, he's completely screwed up his life, and there's like a whole moral to the story. But then he goes another carriage forward, and he's in the noughties, right? But then he can go back. And so he goes back to the 70s, and then he goes back to the 60s, and he goes back to the 50s. And I think he even goes back to like the 40s when he was a little kid, right? And I tell you what, it really, really was a great example of the different styles that each of the decades have had. So that, my grandmother turning 100 years old this year, and that film, Last Train to Christmas, just really opened up my eyes to the actual amount of change that we see throughout the world over the course of an average lifetime, right? But it really does make me realize just how much we experience through our lifetime, right? Now, I was born in 1989, and I have absolutely every intention to live to 100 years old. If my grandmother, Bridget, can do it, I can 100% definitely do it. Like, it's in my DNA, it's in my genes. I'm determined to do that. Unless I get hit by a bus or something, which is like, c'est la vie. You know, if that's the way I go, that's the way I go. But anyway, it just made me realize that if you were to live to 100 years old, like my grandmother Bridie, who is turning 100 this September, you are going to witness so much change throughout those 100 years, because every single decade tends to have its own personality. So the reason as to why I want to talk about this is because I want to take what is normally spoken about inside of the personal development world and the coaching world and the, self-development world, and I want to kind of flip it on its head, because a lot of people will talk to you about how little time we've got, right? How we've got a very small amount of time, and therefore what we need to do is we need to maximize that time in order to make a big impact. Now, I believe in maximizing our time in order to make a big impact. I believe in being grateful for every day, because undoubtedly there is a major trap that we can fall into, which is getting to the end of our life, looking back and saying, oh my God, that went by in the blink of an eye and I didn't do the things I wanted to do. But, right, instead of focusing on this from the viewpoint of we don't have much time, therefore maximize the time you've got, my message is going to be we have a lot more time than what we realize. And we're on this planet a lot longer than what a lot of people, I think, appreciate. Now, this is, of course, making one huge assumption that we live a long, healthy, happy life and we move into our old age, much like my grandmother, Bridget, right? But making the assumption that that does happen to us, what I'm saying, which is a little bit different to what a lot of other people say in the coaching space, is that we've got more time. We've got way more time than what a lot of people are realizing, and we've got more time than what the world gives us credit for. We are going to experience so many different decades and so many different changes and so many different shifts and so many different cultures and styles and everything throughout our time period, that what I want us to do is I want us to appreciate every day, not out of the fear that we don't have much time, but out of the love and interest in the fact that we have a lot of it. And therefore, if we've got a lot of time, what we can do is we can take a deep breath, we can focus on gratitude, and we can just embrace the time that we're here. Because the idea of saying, look, fucking hell, we're running out of time, you don't have that much time, you're gonna blink and all of a sudden 50 years are gonna pass, so you've got to really maximize it, you've really got to make the most of every day. I understand the premise and I understand the message and the intention behind the message, yet what it creates is it creates tension. And what happens when you're feeling tense is you seize up, and actually that's the worst position to be in if you're going to waste time, right? I'll tell you about an experience, something I've actually experienced a lot of in the past. So you've got one whole day to yourself to do whatever you want. Right? That you don't have to do any work, you don't have to go to any meetings, you don't have any responsibilities, right? Have you ever had the experience where you've got a whole day to yourself And what you do at the start of the day is you almost like seize up because you think, I don't know, there's so much I can do with this time. I don't quite know what to do. I could maybe go here. I could see that person. I could do this. I could watch that movie. I could play that game. I could read that book. I could go to the gym. I've got all of these things I could do and I want to do them all. And I've got this time to do it in. But what happens is that tension that's created at the very start of the day stops you from doing any of them. So you kind of start watching that movie and you think, oh my God, an hour has already passed. Actually, what I've got to do is I've got to go and read that book. And then you read one page and you're not enjoying it because you're thinking, fuck, actually, I should go to the gym because I've got this time to relax. And then you go to the gym and then you're there and you're listening to a podcast and you're thinking, oh yeah, I want to start looking into this one particular topic. I better go home and look at it. And you go home and look at it. And it's like all of a sudden, the day goes woof, and it goes really quick, right? It goes really fast. And then you look back and you think, if I had just picked one of those things to focus on, right? If I just picked one of those fucking things, I could have really enjoyed it and I could have really maximized it. And I would look back now and I would say that was a good day. You then look back and you say, I would have preferred to have just accepted that it's only a day, that day is going to go by very quickly, and therefore, instead of trying to cram everything into that one day, actually, I should have just focused on one of those things I wanted to do, and I would have enjoyed it more, and I would have had a better time. This is my viewpoint on it, right? I've started to realize that actually slowing down gives you more time. Right? Now, if you think about this for a moment, I always like to apply life to certain metaphors, right? Of things that are going on around us that give us a clear indication of what's actually happening. Now, let's think about this for a moment. If you were running a race, then you've got two options, right? Let's say for a minute you want to try to run that race as fast as you possibly can and get to the end as quick as you can in order to win the race, right? Now, let's also imagine the other option was to just take your time and just to take it slow and just pace yourself. And whilst you're walking, you can just take in everything else that's going on around you, right? Now, if you were to run the race as fast as you can, there may be a chance that you're the first person to finish the race, right? There's also a chance that you could go as fast as you can and still not even be the first person to finish. But if you go as fast as you can and you go as hard as you can and you put your head down and you don't recognize anything else that's going on around you, but you just really fucking go for it, there is a chance that you'll be the first person technically to run that race. Yet, at the same time, it also means that you experienced the shortest race. When? In the blink of an eye. Now, if you were to take your time and you were to walk the race and instead you weren't even to consider it a race, as far as you're concerned, you're not up against anyone. You're not part of this competition. You're not there to win a trophy. You're not there to get the medal. That stuff isn't something that's in your awareness because what you've decided to do is you've decided to leisurely walk it and embrace every single moment and take in everything that you see and everything that you hear and everything that you feel. Now, there is a good chance that you're not the first person to get to the end of that race, yet you've had the longest experience. Now, so many people treat life like a race, right? Like it's something that needs to be won. And therefore, I need to get on the podium and I need to get that medal and I need to be fucking recognized for that. And what happens is we put ourselves in that situation where we're trying to make things happen so quickly and so abruptly that actually what happens is it just means that we create that tension from the very, very beginning and we end up getting less things done. We end up completing less things because we try to cram in too much and then the whole thing just goes by in the blink of an eye. Whereas if we were to just take and make the decision every so often that we're not trying to be up on that podium and we're not trying to get that medal and that's not the thing that is going to reward us for being a part of this race, but instead, what's going to reward us is taking the longest possible time we can to get to the end because we want to enjoy every single moment and embrace everything that comes with that. Then there's a big element of that these days that I'm looking at and I'm thinking, I get it. I want some of that and I want this thing to last as long as possible and I want to embrace every single moment. Naturally, the person who runs the race the fastest is going to have the shortest race. And the person that takes the longest is going to have the longest race. At the moment, I'm interested in a long race, right? It's not even a race whatsoever. I'm interested in a lengthy experience. So this is why we're talking about this today, because new year, new me, it really fits into this because it can very much cause, I actually really love the idea of a nice fresh beginning, right? And I think that the new year does bring that in a nice way. Now, I've been talking to a few different people recently that have loads of different viewpoints in terms of the calendar cycle of the world that we live in, the time cycle. I know a lot of people that believe that their new year, your new year and our new year should start in the middle of summer. Because when we're in the middle of summer, we're feeling a lot more relaxed, we're feeling a lot more refreshed, and that's probably a better time to set ourselves some yearly goals than in the winter when we're coming post-Christmas. We're feeling a little bit tired because we've all been overeating and chilling out. And also it's dark and it's cold outside for most of the world. And I get that, right? I do understand that. At the same time, I quite like the whole New Year thing around about this time of year. I like having the cold days and the short days and thinking, you know what, this is the time to actually knuckle down so that when I'm creating something now, I can reap the benefits of it come summertime. So anyway, it's all subjective, it's all up for discussion. But overall, the whole idea of creating a new refreshing start in order to set some goals and achieve those goals throughout the year, I'm not against it. I like it. I like the idea of that. The one element of the new year, new me, new goals thing that I'm going to address is the tension that's created at the beginning of that journey when we make the decision that actually what we're going to do is too many things. Because that day that I've been talking about is very much representative to the year as well. Because what we'll do at the start of one of those days is say, I've got all day, I've got to try to cram in as much as possible. And what we do is we end up not focusing on one or two things to completion. We end up focusing on many different things and we don't complete them. The year is exactly the same, right? The year works in the exact same way. At the very, very beginning, we look at it and we say, we've got all this time and I want to do all these things. And therefore, new year, new me, I'm going to get all of these things done. I'm going to achieve all of these goals. And we look at certain influencers and we look at certain people in the coaching space that are constantly saying to us, I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I maximize my day. I make sure that I'm always like drinking 2 liters of water and I'm eating really clean and I read a book a day and I'm like, boom, 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 boom. But really, a lot of the time, what we want to be looking at is we don't want to be looking at that and saying, right, that is a 100% what I absolutely must be doing because that's what they're doing. What we need to do is we need to take a big step back and say, but what is it that I want to do throughout the year? And what are the things that I want to achieve? And what are some of the checkpoints that I want to reach? Because it's going to be completely different to that individual. It's going to be completely different to that person. So that's one thing that I really, really want you guys to focus on at the moment is just thinking, right, out of the entire year, what are the things that I would like to achieve? Not based on what someone else has given me and what based on the guidance of an influencer or the guidance of another coach or feeling like I need to achieve all of these things because that's what somebody else who I do like and appreciate and respect has done. But thinking about it in the sense of what exactly is it that I want to achieve, right? Me personally, not anybody else, not following anyone else, but me. And then my suggestion is try to cut those things down, right? Because if we're using that same example that we had at the beginning, talking about the day, then if we were to cut those items down and only focus on one or two, we're going to have a much more productive day and we're going to feel happier by the end of it. This is exactly the same. So I am not in any way here to stamp on the new year, new me, because I do like it. I think it has a lot of potential, right? The reason as to why it gets a bad rap and the reason as to why people are like, look, we shouldn't do that is because the common theme is witnessing people setting far too many goals, then only achieving maybe 1% or 2% of all of them, getting to the end of the year and then saying, well, now I need to start again. And doing that enough years in a row is then going to create that sense that the idea of the fresh start and the new year, new me just doesn't work. The idea works. the premise works, right? And to give ourselves a cutoff point and a checkpoint to say, I've reached the end of this cycle now. What have I achieved? And what am I planning for the next cycle? That works. That's a good thing. But overloading ourselves with too many things that are not going to be possible to achieve, that's where we get completely derailed. A long time ago, at the start of my coaching journey, I heard Tim Ferriss, right? Tim Ferriss is the author of the 4-Hour Workweek, and he's somewhat of a coach himself. Tim Ferriss said, in a world of multitaskers, if you can single task, you have a superpower. Now, what he meant by that, if you have the ability to actually do one thing at a time and see that thing through to completion, then you have a superpower, because we're living in a world where everybody's trying to juggle. This very much lends itself to the topic of today and the new year, new me. I'm not trying to take away from that. I'm saying we should embrace that, whilst at the same time focusing on a few select things that are really going to make the biggest difference and seeing those things through to completion. This is what I really want to be talking about today. So we want this journey to be longer, right? First and foremost, we want the year to be as long as it can be, assuming that it's a year that's full of things that we enjoy doing and growth and transformation and change and all of the things that we talk about at TCM. So in which case, why rush it? We don't want to run it. We don't want to rush through it. We don't want to try to get to the end of the year ASAP. We want to try to drag it out. We want to try to make sure that it's as lengthy and as long as possible. Now, we have also understood and witnessed that we can slow down time and we can slow down days when focusing in on one thing at a time. Now, there's something that I learned when I was an actor called circles of attention. And basically, this is a technique in which when you're standing on stage, if you make the decision that your circle of attention is the whole stage, then that creates a certain level of awareness, right? Because you're aware of all of the other people that are there on stage with you. You're aware of the environment. You're aware of the set. You're aware of the props. You're aware of what everyone else is doing. You may even decide that your circle of attention is so big that you're aware of the audience, right? Some actors choose to do that. Then what you can do in order to give yourself a slightly different perspective on what's going on inside of the scene, you can make that circle of awareness slightly smaller. So now all of a sudden, what's within your circle of awareness may only be one or two of the other actors, and your focus is on them. And it might be on what they're immediately doing in front of you, right? And maybe there's a couple of props and maybe a certain element of the set. Everything else out of your circle of attention, you're not looking at it anymore. You're not focused on it. You're not even thinking about it, right? So that creates a certain dynamic that you bring to your performance. Then what you could do is you could choose to make your circle of awareness even smaller, so that actually you're only focused immediately on that one person that's standing in front of you, what they're saying, what they're doing, and maybe the one prop that they're holding, right? Then you could take your circle of attention and make it even smaller, so the only thing you're focused on is what you're doing, right? What you're holding in your hand, what you're thinking, where you are inside of the space. Then you can make that circle of attention even smaller, and you could just focus all the way in just on that one prop that you're holding. And you're not focused on anything else. You're just focused on this one prop. Maybe it's a book, right? And you're just looking at this one book. You're looking at the cover. You're studying the pages. You're studying the color of the book, the size, the shape. Then you could choose to take your circle of attention even smaller. And you may only be focusing on one section of the book, and you're giving it all your time and all your attention. Now let's imagine for a moment you're in the theater, you're an audience member, and you're watching this play. And actor number one, their circle of attention is the whole stage and everyone within it, and even the auditorium. And actor number two, their circle of attention is as small as possible, and they're focusing just on that one piece of that one prop. Those two actors are going to be giving two completely different performances. Not any one better than the other, but they're going to be giving two completely different performances inside of the same play that you're watching, because what they're focused on is completely different. We have to understand that we have the ability to do this through life itself. Often we will find ourselves with a circle of attention that doesn't work for us, right? I'll give you a great example. New year, new me. My circle of attention is on all of the things that I want to achieve this year. Every single one of them. I might have a list of 10 things, 15 things, 20 things. And my circle of attention is going to be on all of them, right? But if we choose to just reduce that circle of attention, and we make a decision that our circle of attention is only focused on 2 of those items throughout the year, you are inevitably going to be able to increase your chances of being able to achieve success and completion of those 2 items with a high standard and within a high standard, rather than if your attention was on 10 items or 15 items. And we have the ability to do that. Also, when we bring our circle of attention inwards, we slow down time. And the reason that we slow down time is because we don't have the conscious need to be able to process as much information as what we do when our circle of attention is huge. The more you're thinking about, the more you have to think about, and the more brain noise you have, and the more busyness that's going on inside your head, it feels like time goes really quick, right? If you've got lots going on inside your mind, you're thinking about 100 things at once, and you're trying to figure out how you're going to juggle them all, and then you realize you're really, really, really busy. The moment that you realize that you're incredibly busy is the moment that you realize you'll run out of time, right? You get to that point where you've got so much brain noise and you've got so much going on inside of your head, and there's so much busyness that by the time you even get to the point of thinking about all of that stuff, the majority of the day has gone, right? Yet, when we allow ourselves to remove all of that noise and we allow ourselves to get rid of all of that busyness, and we decide, right? Now, that's always one of my favorite words, isn't it? Decide. There's nothing more powerful than a human decision. When we decide that what we're going to do is only focus on 1 or 2 very select things, that is the moment where it feels like time has slowed down. When we are focused solely on one thing at a time to completion in order to give it our time and our attention and our love and to engage in that thing to a high standard, time slows down. For those of you that have kids, there's one thing I want you to do, right? I want you to experiment with this. Now, I want you to take the time at some point today, and you don't need to let them know you're doing this, right? And when the kids are running around and stuff, of course, it could be a bit of a challenge, but I want you to take the time today at some point to really study the faces of your children. Really study them. Look at them. And I don't just mean look in their direction and look at their face. I mean see them. Don't just look, but see. Really see the intricate details of their face, and really, really watch the intricate details of their face. And it's a lot easier doing this, of course, when they're asleep or when they're really, really young. But really study them and really allow yourself to experience what it's like to slow down time as you're only engaging in that one thing. And anytime another thought pops into your head, and that thought might be what you need to do tomorrow, that thought might be the fact that you haven't done this thing, or you're worried about this conversation, or you don't want to go to work tomorrow, then just don't beat yourself up. Let that thought come and go, but then readjust and re-engage with the study of that child's face. Because not only are you looking at something that naturally is you're wired to deem to be beautiful and extremely meaningful to you, but you also have this unbelievable realization that you don't actually look at their faces in that way ever, or at least not very often. You will actually notice things about your own children's faces that you haven't noticed before because we've not properly looked. You can do the same thing with your face. The next time you're standing in front of a mirror, and feel free to do this in a space when you're on your own so no one thinks you're crazy, really truly study your own face. This is a face that we see in the mirror every single day, and I can guarantee you will see things on your face or features of your face that you have never seen before. This is a face that you have had your entire life, and that is a great example of circles of attention. Today's theme when it comes to the whole new year, new me, is me not stamping all over it, not saying it's something we shouldn't do, not going, yeah, no, it's bullshit, blah, blah. This is a good thing, but it needs to be paired with appropriate circles of attention. The vast majority of the time, our circles of attention are too big. They're too big, right? We've expanded them too much. Most of the time, we are allowing too many things inside of our circle of attention. And therefore, we're trying to juggle too many things, spin too many plates, and we're trying to focus on too many things at once. And we're missing the small, intricate details, the beautiful things about this physical world that we live in that allow us to literally slow down the time that we have. I am not in any way an expert in meditation. I've got a very limited amount of knowledge around meditation, even though I fully understand the premise of it and also agree with the premise of it. But for me, it doesn't come from the idea of like those kind of studies or those kind of cultures or practices. Initially came from acting. It was the circle of attention exercise that we did during acting classes that made me realize big time that when we bring those circles of attention right down, we get to study the small, finer details of what is going on inside of our lives, the things that we miss. That's the key to this, is the things that we miss. And we miss a lot on a daily basis because we don't bring those circles of attention down small enough. If we are able to not miss those details and in fact engage in those details, then we're able to lengthen the year. We're able to expand it out because we're slowing down time by focusing on these small, intricate details, one thing at a time, right? One thing at a time. This is what I want to encourage everybody to do. I want to encourage everybody to make the decision that actually 2022 is going to be a new beginning in one way or another, right? As long as it's a positive way, we are making the decision that we're going to create that, right? What we're going to do is we're going to make sure that 2022 is a positive new beginning. Yet, we're not going to get caught up in the trap of thinking that that positive new beginning needs to be paired with lots and lots of different ambitious goals, right? Loads of them, tons at once. But what we're going to do instead is we're going to pick a couple, one or two, maybe three, that really mean something to us. And we're going to bring our circle of attention inwards so much that we choose to only focus on one of those things at a time. And we're bringing our circle of attention in so much that we're going to choose to give that one thing all of our time, attention, love, appreciation, all the way through to completion. If you're able to do that with literally one or two or three items that are meaningful to you, then you're going to be able to get to the end of the year. You're going to be able to look back and say, that was a year that I really, truly made the most of. That was a year that I really, truly maximized. I didn't get to the end of this year and think, wow, I wasted another year. Maybe next year is my year. I didn't get to an end of another year and think, wow, all I felt were the tensions of trying to get to the finish line and the tensions of trying to cram in as much as I possibly could. You know, you won't have one of those. You'll have one of those years, much like one of those days where you don't try to put too much on your plate, and you'll look back and you'll say, I'm really happy I embraced and maximized those couple of things that were very important to me. And at the same time, the year felt longer because I was embracing every moment and embracing every day. Taking a breath, slowing down, bringing in your circles of attention. When we see someone who is very, very, very good at something that we appreciate and love and respect, right? Now that's going to be different for all of you. Let's imagine for a moment there's an Olympic standard gymnast. Or let's imagine for a moment there's a Nobel Prize winning scientist. Or let's imagine that there's an Oscar winning actor, right? Something that we can look at and go, wow, I really love and appreciate what it is they've done and what they've created. They're very, very good at that. That person has become very skillful at singling down their circle of attention so much that what they're focused on is that one thing that's in front of them. That's how they've achieved what they've achieved. Not by trying to juggle multiple things at once. That Olympic standard gymnast doesn't say, right, in 2022, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to not only win Olympic gold in gymnastics, but I'm also going to dabble in swimming, and I'm going to do fencing as well. And I'm also going to think about starting an investment portfolio, whilst at the same time, I'm going to make sure that I go out there and learn how to ride a horse. And at the same time, I'm going to speak 3 different languages. The reason that we look at those individuals and go, fuck me, they get so much done in such a short amount of time is because they make maximum progress with limited things. They don't make limited progress with maximum things. There's a huge difference between those two things, right? When we make a limited amount of progress with maximum amount of things, that is the opposite of progression, right? In fact, you fall into regression, almost like you feel like you're going backwards. And you get to the end of the year and you think, fuck, I didn't do anything. I did nothing, right? But when we're able to give maximum attention to a limited amount of things, that's a different story altogether, because that's where real progress happens. That's where we can really reach the end of the year and say, I love that, I appreciate that, I maximized it, and I managed to complete a couple of things that really meant something to me. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that was a useful insight into the new year, new me thing. I know that lots of different people have lots of different viewpoints on it, and primarily, like I'd mentioned before, there's a lot of influencers that will come at this from a point of view of saying, well, we haven't got that much time, so you've got to go, 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 go. What I'm here to tell you is we've got a hell of a lot more time than what we're led to believe. And whilst at the same time, you can slow that time down by focusing in on singular, smaller circles of attention, which is definitely what I recommend you do with your new year as you become that new you. I love you all. You're amazing. You're incredible. You're powerful. You're valued. You're valid. You are in the right place at the start of 2022 to be here at the moment studying towards becoming a coach, which is what I hope each and every one of you are doing at the moment. If that is your only thing that you do throughout 2022, that is going to seriously project you forward whilst not overwhelming you. So, yeah, guys, if you haven't yet joined the Coaching Masters membership, then you definitely need to join the membership. I want to obviously try to enroll as many people onto our courses as possible. I've got a firm belief that the more coaches we have in this world will be a better place. That belief comes from the fact that when somebody qualifies as a coach, they have a skill set to be able to not only listen to people, but really truly hear them, whilst at the same time being able to help them break down their limiting beliefs, increase their confidence, achieve their goals, shift their perspective, right? We need more of that in this world. In the same aspect that we're always going to need more doctors, we're also going to need more coaches, right? We need more people that actually just want to focus on addressing someone's limiting belief and breaking that down, because something like a limiting belief that we've held on to for years can act as fucking poison to the body, you know? And where's our doctor that's going to help us remove that limiting belief? It doesn't exist. It's a coach. A coach is going to be the person that helps you do that. You know, if we have a perspective that is damning, or a perspective that's holding us back and stopping us from progressing and stopping us from achieving our goals, what doctor is going to put us in a position where we shift that perspective? It's going to be a coach that helps us do that, right? We need more coaches in this world to help more people overcome those issues and therefore move closer towards what it is they want. So, ladies and gentlemen, I love you all. You're amazing. You're powerful. You're valued. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep coaching your way to freedom, which is what we do every single day here at TCM. Mwah!